Welcome aboard, everybody. I want to thank my friend Broken Feather for sending me a box of Siberian Elm. Siberian Elm has a specific gravity of 0.55. We know that maple, hard rock maple, has a specific gravity of 0.63, so that's what I'll be doing the comparative test along with the willow. Okay. This is one of the reasons why I keep wanting to talk about specific gravities in woods, because even within, say, the Siberian elm, that could change. Let me explain. From the Forest Service, the U.S. Department of Agriculture, I'm going to read what it states regarding Siberian elm. Okay. This is the headline. Influence of site type on wood-specific gravity and ash content for urban-grown hardwoods. And the Siberian elm is considered and classified as a hardwood. But this is what it reads. Accurate characterization of wood properties is important for informing urban forestry science, policy and management related to carbon cycling, ecosystem services modeling, and wood utilization. In this study, urban wood samples are collected and analyzed for basic specific gravity and ash content. Two important wood properties that inform biomass estimation and potential for biofuel feedstocks. Samples were collected in Baltimore, Maryland, USA, across 4 urban sites from 7 tree species commonly planted in urban settings. Results are compared when published values for forest-grown trees and from a previous study of urban stumpwood. Site type comparisons yield some significant differences. Siberian elm trees in tree pits had higher specific gravity than those grown in unrestricted sites. Ash species and Siberian elm had higher ash content in trees grown in lawn strips, while red maple ash content was lowest in lawn strip trees. Consistent with previous work, results suggest that urban specific gravity and AC may be higher than published value from forest-grown trees, but this depends on species and type. So, according to the USDA, Forest Service Department, depending on where you harvest your wood for making your homemade gunpowder, the specific gravities of those species could very well change. And Broken Feather, that might be the reason why we have different burning, or junipers. My juniper burns relatively clean, and he's claiming his burns relatively dirty. There again, could be the groundwater or where it's actually grown. So these things do make a difference in how your gunpowder is going to perform, where you harvest your trees. So what I've done is I've got 3 jars set out: the control willow, maple, and elm, the Siberian elm. I'll get the camera turned around and you can observe for yourself what the differences are. So obviously, this is the willow, 0.39. It's the maple, 0.63, and the elm's supposed to be 0.55. Which, makes it lighter as far as the specific gravity is concerned. And if you can observe and look real close, you can see that the Siberian elm does occupy a little bit more as far as volume is concerned. Now I should also note, just for the sake of consistency, I have not screened the elm yet through that microfilter. I just wanted to get this done so that I can move on to other things. So I'm going to go ahead and get it screened off here in a little while and start milling it, and we'll see what happens with the first test burn. Stay tuned. Well, I'm about to do the 12-hour burn test, and I thought that I would share this with everybody, just simply because for me, I haven't really seen this at 12 hours. My friend Broken Feather and I, we've been having a conversation because when he started making his gunpowder with this Siberian Elm, he indicated to me at 2 hours his gunpowder was already caking and compacting on the bottom of his mill jar. Now I have already experienced this. At 6 hours it was just starting to. At 8 hours I stopped it, popped the lid off and looked at it, and it was all caked even at 8 hours. I do have a thought on that, but I want to do the burn test first. So what I'm going to do, because at the 8-hour mark I emptied the container into my screen like this, and I shook it and let the lead media do the work for me. But what I did notice is at the bottom of my container, a lot of it had returned to the powder form. It did not stay in the solid mass like I showed previously with the yucca. Remember, I did that yucca at 30 hours. I shook it and I showed the bottom of this container, and it was all little tiny beads. Well, at 8 hours, this returned back to powder. So I'm going to go ahead and empty the container, screen it out, grab a little bit of powder, and do the burn test, and I'll give you what I think might be happening here. 10-hour burn test. It's about what I expected. Let me give you a close-up of the block. There's a close-up of the block. You saw what the burn rate was, and like I said, I pretty much expected that. 12 hours. If I said 10 hours, I don't remember now, but 12 hours. That's clean. That's pretty damn clean. Let me get my tongue involved. Try to get some of this charcoal on the finger. I'd say it's pretty clean. Okay, now let me give you what I think might be going on here by way of it compacting sooner. Let me get reread from the Forest Service, U.S. Department of Agriculture, and it says influence of site type on wood specific gravity and ash content in urban grown hardwoods. If Siberian elm on the cellular level can be influenced by what's in the ground that would affect a specific gravity, which would make the specific gravity higher, that would tell me on a cellular level Siberian elm can greatly absorb what's in the ground. I know I'm a little out of my league here, so I'm going to try to make it so we can follow. So basically what I'm trying to get at, if on the cellular level Siberian elm can readily absorb what's around it, in this case we're talking about ash, then would the charcoal from Siberian elm also be more readily, or be able to more readily absorb the potassium nitrate and the sulfur? Let's think about this for just a moment. When you take your wood and make it into a charcoal, in my opinion, you're still maintaining some of that wood on the cellular level. I mean, to me, when you get past the charcoal and get into the ash to where your wood becomes ash, you've completely destroyed everything at that point. But if your charcoal can still remain or still maintain some of the properties that are seen at the cellular level, in this case Siberian elm, where it can, absorb the ground ash and become a higher specific gravity, or show that it could be a higher specific gravity. I'm hoping this makes sense, because I'm kind of like I said, I'm out of my league with this one as to have a good working theory as to why this is compacting sooner than anything else that I've ever done. And the only thing that I can attribute it to, possibly two things: warmer daytime temperature. But as I just did right now, I run it through the screen and it turned back to powder. Some of it maintained some of that hard substance, but you just saw in the burn, it didn't burn all that quick. It kind of burnt like it was still powdery. So if you guys have a thought in this, I know myself and Broken Feather would love to hear it, because right now, we're just kind of like trying to figure out why is this Siberian elm compacting so much quicker. And with that thought in mind, I normally at 25 hours go through and every hour bust everything up and just run it up to 30 hours. I guess I'm going to have to do that every hour, hour and a half, just come out here, because once again, as I mentioned in a previous video, I can hear the difference in sound when this is compacting the powder, or when the powder is compacted on the bottom, because it makes a totally different sound. But honestly, if you guys have an explanation for this that makes sense, instead of just throwing stuff out there, if it really makes sense, I would love to hear, what you think, just simply because, again, I'm of the mind that if on a cellular level, Siberian elm can absorb the ground ash and change the specific gravity, then are those, absorbing type properties at play here in the charcoal, because it seems like it's absorbing the KNO3 and the sulfur quicker, and everything's compacting quicker. And before anybody says anything, no, it's not the water or the moisture in the KNO3. That's not at play here, okay? Because you can just see it now. Well, it's because there's too much moisture in the KNO3. No, that's not the answer. Okay, so I guess that's all I want to speak to right here, right now. I'm going to get back to letting this mill till about dark, and I'll see you at the 24-hour burn test. Well, here we are at the 24-hour burn test, and I think I'm going to shut it down. You can see how well compacted this is. I just knocked all this loose 15 minutes ago, and that's what it's done in 15 minutes. So I'm going to go ahead and run it through the screen, pull out 20 grains, and we'll do a burn test. So I'm just giving you a very extreme close-up, because I know inevitably someone's going to ask, well, are they the same little round balls at 30 hours of mill time? You can see for yourself, it is. Went up pretty quick. Let me show you the block. Okay, that's 20 grains right out of the ball mill. You saw what it did. And give it the dry finger rub. That's even cleaner than the yucca at this point. Try to get the rest of it. It's even cleaner than the yucca. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get this pucked up, dried, and the next test will be 30 grains of this pucked, dried, and grained to what I normally shoot. Alright, we're at the point to do the 30 grain burn test. It's been pucked, dried, screened down to my typical 2-3F with some fines in it. But ultimately I just want to see, like in the previous burns, if it's going to burn relatively clean with a larger amount of gunpowder. I think that went up pretty quick. There's the typical close-up of the block. Decide for yourself. I think it's pretty clean. There's not a whole lot of charcoal dust left behind, which you're going to get some left behind no matter what, because you're using charcoal as your fuel source. Wet rub. I'd say that's pretty clean comparatively to everything else that I've done. Alrighty, now I'm going to go over and weigh out 80 grains and see how much that occupies in my powder measure. So there we are. This balance scale is leveled and I'm right at 80 grains. So now let's see what that occupies in my powder measure. Alright, let's see what that's going to do. Let me settle it like I normally do. Raise it to the top. Make sure she's right at level. Bit much, oops, bit much. Let's see here. Okay. I'm going to call that good. Right to the top. Can you guys see where that mark is? I mean, that's just a fraction above the 80 mark. Just a fraction above it. So that, by volume, is pretty doggone close to 80 grains by weight, isn't it? So at this point, I want to address a couple of comments in my comment section under the last few previous videos. And I kind of want to, just re-emphasize some things, all right? First of all, I really don't care what the G in your gunpowder stands for, whether it's glazed or graphite. I don't care. I keep making that statement regarding the graphite just simply because of what, and I'm going to read it again, what is off of the Swiss black powder website. Swiss black powder has long been considered the best, in parentheses, in black powder due to a long tradition of black powder production dedicated to quality in components and workmanship. Well, let's just pause there for a minute. When you make your homemade black powder, aren't you using 100% potassium nitrate? I do. Aren't you using 100% sulfur in your mixture? I do. So that statement, quality and components, is pretty much irrelevant, isn't it, in this statement? And workmanship. Well, define what your workmanship really is. You take the three components, and again, in those three components, the only variant that you may have is your choice of charcoal. Based on specific gravities, your 15 grams may represent more or less than what Swiss is using with buckthorn alder. Okay? Now, going on. And black powder is made entirely with alder, buckthorn, charcoal with a heavy graphite glazing. Once again, I don't care what that G stands for, whether it's, glazing, as somebody suggests, putting it in the tumbler. This is what Swiss does. They don't use graphite glazing. They put it in a tumbler for 24 hours, and that's how it gets shiny, shiny black, because that's polishing. Well, if that was really what Swiss was doing, then they would say black powder is made entirely with all the buckthorn charcoal with a prolonged polishing period. You're talking two different things, because when you say charcoal with a, that indicates that there is an additive to it. And in this case, it just may be graphite. Now let me show you, in case you missed that video. Sometime back, I took 100 grams of 3F Swiss and I put it in my ball mill for about 30 minutes. And at the end of that 30 minutes, I sifted away what was the gun powder, as opposed to what you might think would be the graphite. Now, when I recaptured all that graphite and weighed it, if I remember correctly, the videos on this channel, Swiss versus Swiss, or I milled 100 grams of Swiss, it must be out of my mind, something to that effect. But when I weighed what would not go back to powder, it weighed 15 grains, I think it was 15 grains or 15 grams. I can't remember precisely. But the end result is this. And I want you to realize that this is the second time I've actually done this. I did it once several years ago with some 3F Elephant, thinking that I could take that 3F Elephant, put it in my ball mill, get it back down to the powder, wet it, puck it, and screen it and grade it to 3F. Well, what happened at that time, that's when I discovered little tiny hairs that came off of that elephant black powder that I could not get back into powder form. So I had to discard that. Now let me show you the results of what I did with the Swiss in my ball mill for 30 minutes. So what you have right here is Swiss Factory 3F. Do you see how shiny that is? Yeah, that's real shiny, ain't it? I would agree. Just now look at the size of the grains, okay? You would say that's 3F. Now, moving to the left, this is what would not return back to powder. Let me shake it, and you can see that those fines are a whole lot smaller than the 3F. This is what I made once I remilled it, separated this, the heavy polishing, and repucked it, and this is my typical gunpowder. And I state it all the time. It's a good 2 to 3F with some fines, or what some people would consider 4F mixed in. So, based on the comment, I am to assume that if I put this in my ball mill for 24 hours, this Swiss gunpowder with buckthorn or alder is going to become like this. How does this fit into that comment? That's what I remilled. You're telling me after 24 hours of polishing, I'm going to get this without adding this. Guys, I don't care. Make up your own mind. Now I have something else that I would like to discuss and show. So when I compared those two Swiss gunpowders, the one that I remilled in factory, I shot this in my flintlock, and knowing that I now have to match weight to weight or weight to volume based on what was left behind after I milled that 100 grams of Swiss. Swiss factory, 70 grains by volume. 5-shot average was only 1647 with a spread of 105. The stuff that I remilled, repucked with a 12-ton jack, 5-shot average was 1669 with a spread of 78. Okay? So I actually improved in the performance by matching the weight to volume. And this is what I keep telling everybody. If you're going to test your homemade black powder against a factory, match the grain or the volume to the weight. There is a difference, and that little container shows that. Now, I want to address another one because every time I show what the weight to volume is in this measurer, people are getting the wrong impression by thinking that I'm not compressing to industry standards density of my pucks. That's why they're coming out lighter. But once again, you're going to get different densities depending on what your charcoal source is. Some might be greater than others. Some might be spot on. Okay? But the commenter made the comment that because by weight and volume, my gunpowder is not pucked to industry standards. And someone else made a comment, well, my powder measure must be off. Go back on this channel. I clearly showed what everybody needs to be aware of with these powder measures. This seat right here threads onto this, and it does come loose. That's why when I took both of my powder measures apart that day, I Loctited both of these into place. So my powder measure is not off. Now, pulling this off of the internet, I just want to kind of read 3 short things here. One control on black powder is it must conform to the density range of 1.72 to 1.8 cubic meters, I guess. The amounts of potassium nitrate, sulfur, and charcoal are given. Yes, they're given by weight, but not by volume. But compaction pressure and particle size are not. Such given criteria results in a large latitude of allowable variance in making black powder. Do I need to read that? Reread that? It's just general criteria. And you will get a large range of black powder. Read another one. Black powder's density typically falls between 1.72 and 1.80 centimeters or whatever the hell it is. I don't really fucking care at this time. This density is a crucial control parameter in black powder manufacturing, influencing its quality and performance. The density is affected by factors like compaction pressure and particle sizes, which can be varied within a certain range. For the feller that left the comment that tried to convince me that my powder is lighter because my density is not up to industry standards, and yes, I'm using a 12-ton jack with a 1-inch pucking die. How does this fit into your comment? This actually comes from a muzzleloading forum. In his book, Ingalls relates that the basic density of properly prepared black powder is approximately 1.60 to 1.8 grams per centimeter cubed. I'm going to give you a close-up of that. So if my gunpowder, as you may assume, that I'm not compacting to the industry standard, and if this Ingram book says that properly prepared black powder is approximately 1.60 to 1.8 grams per centimeter, then according to your comment that you think my gunpowder is 1.70, then my gunpowder is well within capable performing gunpowder if you're going to believe Ingram's book of 1.60. I just don't get some of these commenters, guys. I just don't get it. I have showed over and over and over again that my gunpowder is extremely performative at 80 grains by weight. I don't care what the industry standard is. You know why? Because I'm not manufacturing this for sale. I'm just a home hobbyist making homemade black powder, doing whatever I can to save myself 30 frickin' dollars a pound for gunpowder, which I can outshoot when I did my Swiss versus Swiss video. I don't care about what the industry standard says, because it's clear to me that there's a huge variance, anywhere from 0.160 to 1.8 to 1.70. You're talking about a 12 gram per centimeter difference in that. All right, let's head on out and see what this Chinese elm, and yes, I said Chinese because sometimes Siberian elm is called Chinese elm. All right, let's go see what it does. Just real quick, here's my shooting bench. I'm going to pan down right to the ground. The deer are just walking right up to it. Cool. So before the breeze picks up again, it's 10 o'clock in the morning. It's already 80 degrees and the cicadas are already out. I will be using Siberian Elm in the flash pan, so let's just see how this goes. It's at 1781. Well, that's not the most powerful first shot I've ever taken. All right, get reloaded and keep on a-going. To be expected, there's the first patch. It's pretty clean. 1762. 1262. I'm not buying it, but I did see that patch fly. It's pretty clean for just the third shot. I don't know, maybe my chronograph's just crapping out. I'll just keep going with it. Broken feather, I think you're right. 1275. I think it's reading the patch instead of the ball. $13.49. I don't know what the hell's going on with this chronograph. All right, I'm going to try one more shot for two reasons. I pulled the chronograph up about maybe 4 feet, and I'm trying a different material for patching. It's still 20 thousandths, but it's not as tight weave as like what a pillow ticking is. It's hard to get pillow ticking at 20 thousandths, so now I have to try to find something else that's going to be a really good substitute. So I'm going to try that right now. It's a little more like it. 1803. Couldn't find that patch, but she's getting a little hard to load. And if you can look at the lock, she's starting to get a little dirty. $17.92. Maybe I've been shortchanging myself all this time by having that chronograph at 15 feet. Should have been bringing it into about 10 or so. I saw that patch. There's that patch. A little frayed, but it's pretty clean. So I don't know why I was having problems loading. All right, let me see if I can get you another good number. $17.70. What is that? $17.51. All right, and I also went to a 18 thousandths patch to see if it helped make the loading a little easier, and it did just a little bit. $17.46. All right, first things first. My temperature gauge tells me it's 83 degrees in here. So the temperature didn't rise all that much during this shooting session. This was the last patch. It's a pillow ticking patch. And you can see for 10 shots, she's pretty clean, but you can also see where she's torn through. Okay. The patch prior to that was this new material. It's not new. It is it's 100% cotton, but the weave isn't as tight. But there's that ninth patch, and you can see it's it's tearing through. But that really didn't affect the shot, and I'll show you where number 9 and number 10 went. Okay, so once again, this is patch number 1. And this is about a 23 thousandths patch, so I'm going to have to 86 these. But that first shot's pretty clean. And then the subsequent shots, here's another one that I use. That's that material we're trying to use as patching material. This one didn't tear through. Okay, but it's pretty clean, whatever number shot that was. And then I'll try to hold up the other pillow ticking shot patches. You can see those. That powder burns pretty clean, doesn't it? And this was another one. I think this was the first one of that patching material I want to try to switch to. And what my wife and I are thinking, if we wash it, it might tighten up the fibers a little bit more and become even more tighter. So there's that. Okay, now we know we had a glitch with my chronograph, and I moved it forward, so I threw out all those, the 1200, the two 1200s, and the 113. So I'm going to give you a 7-shot average. 7-shot average is 1778 with a spread of 57. That's not half bad. I've had better, obviously. But all in all, with my 5-shot Swiss factory, 70 grains, my average was 1647 with a spread of 105. The stuff that I remilled, 5-shot average, 1669 with a spread of 78. Make of that what you will, in light of what I recorded earlier in this video. Okay? Then I did a 3-shot Swiss factory, 80 grains by volume, 1658.66 with a spread of 70. And then the stuff that I remilled, 3 shots, 1715 with a spread of 74. And if you guys have been paying attention all along, I think you can see that when I'm using my homemade black powder in that lock, she goes off very, very fast as opposed to when I was using factory. Alright, there's the target. Wasn't the best grouping of that I've had, but number 9 went right here, right there, and that was that patch that was torn up, and number 10 went right here. I think, even though the patch, number 10, pillow tick and torn, she hit the bullseye. And then that 9th patch, torn, still hit the bullseye. So I'm even beginning to question whether all those articles I read years ago about patching, burning through, throws your accuracy off, this target really doesn't show that. Especially with shot number 9 and 10 in a dirty barrel that I had a hard time loading with. So how does Elm stack up against everything else? Well, it burns clean. It's not the highest velocity I've ever produced, but it's right there in the middle of everything else that I've done. Aside of that loading issue, let me just show you where the loading issue began, because I have noted in the past with other dirty powders, I started having loading issues down about here. With the Elm, I started having them about midway up the barrel. So, make of that what you will. I don't know how well camera will pick it up here, but I will tell you that that lock is dirtier than others that I've shown. I didn't have to wipe the frizzen, and I didn't have to clean the underside of the flint, so that's a plus. But as you can see, that lock is a little bit more dirtier than what I've shown before. So with those thoughts in mind, would I use Elm again? Absolutely I would, but it wouldn't be my first choice. I'm still sticking with peanut shell. That seems to be the best so far with all the numbers that I've been gathering. And if you're going to be at the Santa Fe Trail Rendezvous, I've got all those numbers re-recorded in another book, and you can see how everything all lines up side by side, and in particular, not so much the velocities, but the spreads. Because if you have a low spread, then that tells me at least, or at least it should tell me, that my burn rate is pretty stabilized compared to that Swiss at 105 with buckthorn alder. Make of it what you will, I really don't care. Thanks for watching, and everybody have a great day. And for those that'll be at the Santa Fe Trail Rendezvous, I look forward to visiting with you. Bye.